Four desperate men with nothing left to lose. One billionaire CEO who destroyed their lives with a signature. And between them, a single father hiding the skills of a warrior behind a waiter's smile. Tonight, in an upscale restaurant where crystal glasses cost more than monthly rent, violence is about to shatter the silence. But Jonah Carter sees it coming. He always does. Because some instincts never fade, no matter how long you've been running from who you used to be. Before we begin, drop a comment with your city below. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. Now, let's dive in. The universe has a cruel sense of timing. Jonah Carter understood this better than most as he balanced 3 plates of pan-seared salmon along his left forearm, each garnished with microgreens that probably cost more than his daughter's school lunch for a week. The Opal Room wasn't just a restaurant. It was a temple to excess, where men in $1,000 suits made deals that moved markets, and women draped in designer silk sipped wine that cost more per bottle than Jonah's monthly rent. He'd been working here for 8 months. 8 months of yes, sir, and right away, ma'am. 8 months of swallowing his pride with every obsequious smile. 8 months of pretending he was just another faceless server in black slacks and a crisp white shirt, invisible to the people who ran the world from leather booths and corner tables. But tonight felt different. Jonah paused near the kitchen doors, that old familiar tingle running down his spine, the one that used to warn him when a domestic call was about to turn violent, or when a routine traffic stop was anything but routine. He'd learned to trust that instinct during his 12 years on the force. It had saved his life more than once. Now it was screaming at him. His eyes swept the dining room with practiced efficiency, cataloging details most people would never notice. Table 7. Anniversary couple, 3rd glass of champagne, relaxed body language. Table 12. Business dinner, contracts spread between appetizer plates, everyone leaning in. Table 3. Solo diner. Woman, early 30s. Designer everything. Untouched food, checking her phone every 30 seconds. That was Celeste Hahn. Everyone knew who she was. Her face had graced the covers of Forbes, Fortune, and Business Insider. CEO of Hancorp Industries, youngest self-made female billionaire in the country, venture capitalist with the Midas touch. Everything she invested in turned to gold. Everything except the things that couldn't be measured in profit margins. Jonah delivered his salmon plates to table 9, accepted their thanks with a practiced smile, and turned back toward the kitchen. That's when he saw them. 4 men entering through the main doors. Wrong clothes, work jackets and jeans in a place that had a dress code. Wrong energy, tense shoulders, clenched fists, eyes that swept the room like targeting systems. Wrong everything. And they were all looking at table 3. At Celeste Hahn. Shit, Jonah whispered. Marcus, the maitre d', was already moving to intercept them, his professional smile fixed in place. Jonah watched the lead man, early 40s, scarred knuckles, face carved from years of hard labor and harder luck, brush past Marcus like he wasn't there. The other 3 fanned out instinctively, the way men do when they've worked together long enough to move as one unit. Jonah's body made the decision before his mind caught up. He was already moving, weaving between tables with the fluid grace that came from years of martial arts training, not the clumsy urgency of panic. His daughter Emma's face flashed through his mind, her gap-toothed smile, her messy pigtails, her crayon drawings covering their apartment's refrigerator. I can't get fired. Not again. Not when we're finally starting to breathe. But that instinct, that goddamn reliable instinct, told him that if he didn't act right now, someone was going to bleed tonight. The lead man reached Celeste's table just as Jonah arrived. Up close, Jonah could see the tremor in the man's hands, not fear, but rage barely contained. Could smell the whiskey on his breath, see the broken capillaries in his eyes, read the desperation in every line of his face. Ms. Hahn, the man said, his voice rough as gravel. Remember us? Celeste looked up from her phone, and for just a fraction of a second, Jonah saw genuine fear flicker across her perfectly composed features. Then it was gone, replaced by the cool mask of someone who'd built an empire on never showing weakness. I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage, she said, her voice carrying that particular kind of cultivated calm that rich people mistake for courage. Have we met? The man's jaw tightened. Dawson Steel, Riverside facility. You pulled your investment 14 months ago. Ring any bells? Jonah saw it then. The recognition in Celeste's eyes, quickly suppressed. She knew exactly who these men were. And they knew she knew. "Gentlemen," Jonah interjected smoothly, stepping between them and the table with a practiced ease that made it look like he'd simply appeared there. "I'm going to have to ask you to back off, waiter boy." This from the second man, shorter but wider, with hands like hammers and eyes that had seen the inside of a cell. "This doesn't concern you." But Jonah had already clocked all four of them. The lead man, call him Alpha, was the emotional core, the one who'd organized this. The wide one, Beta, was the enforcer, the one most likely to throw the first punch. The thin man hanging back, Gamma, kept glancing at the exits, the one with enough sense to know this was a bad idea, but not enough spine to walk away. And the fourth, Delta, stood perfectly still, eyes locked on Celeste, hands in his pockets. Delta was the real danger. Too calm, too focused. That was a man who'd already made his decision and was just waiting for the right moment. "You're right," Jonah said, keeping his voice low, conversational. "This doesn't concern me. But you know what does? My daughter's Christmas present. I've been saving for 3 months to buy her that bicycle she wants. The purple one with the white basket and the streamers. You know how much that costs? $217. That's what I've got in my savings account right now. $217. Alpha blinked, confused by the non sequitur. Good. Confusion broke momentum. "The hell are you talking about?" Beta growled. "I'm talking about the fact that if you gentlemen start something here tonight, I'm going to lose my job. And if I lose my job, Emma doesn't get her bicycle. So I'm asking, man to man, father to..." Jonah glanced at Alpha's left hand, saw the pale band where a wedding ring used to be. "Father, maybe? Give me 5 minutes. Let me comp you gentlemen some coffee. We can step out to the patio, and you can explain to Ms. Hahn here what you need to explain without the police getting involved." "We tried calling," Alpha said, his voice cracking. "Left messages, sent emails, got lawyers to send letters. Nobody listens. Nobody cares. So we stopped asking nicely." Celeste's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Instinct, muscle memory, and Alpha's hand shot out, slamming down on the table hard enough to make the wine glass jump. Every head in the restaurant turned. "Don't you dare," Alpha snarled. "Don't you fucking dare check your phone while I'm talking to you. My wife..." His voice broke. "My wife is dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. You know what that costs? You know what insurance doesn't cover? Do you have any goddamn idea what it's like to choose between your wife's pain medication and keeping the lights on?" Silence swallowed the opal room. Even the kitchen noise seemed to dim. Jonah recognized Alpha now, the scar over his left eyebrow, the slight hitch in his right shoulder, bullet wound probably, or maybe a factory accident. Tommy Briggs. He'd arrested him 11 years ago for disorderly conduct outside a bar. Drunk and belligerent, but not violent, just a man who'd lost his temper after losing his job. Jonah had let him sleep it off in the drunk tank and dropped the charges. Tommy probably didn't remember him. Jonah had grown a beard since then, put on 15 pounds, traded his uniform for waiter's blacks. But Jonah remembered. He remembered everyone. "Mr. Briggs," Jonah said quietly. "Tommy, it's me, Officer Carter, from the 7th Precinct." Tommy's eyes widened, focusing on Jonah's face for the first time. "Carter? Jesus Christ, is that really you?" "It's just Jonah now. Not a cop anymore." Jonah kept his voice steady, gentle. "But I'm still the guy who gave you a break that night. Still the guy who believes people deserve a chance to be heard. So I'm asking you, please. 5 minutes on the patio. Let me get you coffee. Let me get Ms. Hahn to listen, the right way. Because this way..." He gestured at the restaurant full of staring faces. "This way ends with you in handcuffs and your wife spending Christmas alone." Something crumbled in Tommy's expression. The rage was still there, but now Jonah could see what lay beneath it. Exhaustion, grief, desperation so profound it had its own gravity. "Fine," Tommy said finally. 5 minutes. But she comes too. He pointed at Celeste. "No hiding behind lawyers and security. She looks us in the eye." Celeste stood, smoothing her skirt with hands that only trembled slightly. "I'll give you 10 minutes," she said. "But I want to be clear. I don't respond well to threats. We're past threats, Beta said quietly. We're at consequences. Jonah led them through the restaurant toward the back patio, feeling every eye in the place follow them. Marcus intercepted him near the kitchen. Jonah, what the hell are you doing? The maitre d' hissed. I've already called the police. Cancel it, Jonah said. Give me 15 minutes. The owner is going to I'll handle the owner, trust me, Marcus, please. Marcus stared at him for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. 15 minutes. Then I'm calling them anyway. The patio was empty this time of night, too cold for the usual smoking crowd. String lights overhead cast pools of amber glow across wrought iron furniture. Beyond the decorative fence, the city sprawled in rivers of light and shadow. Jonah held the door as all 6 of them filed out, 5 men and 1 woman, separated by everything except their humanity. He grabbed a thermal carafe of coffee from the service station, some mugs, and followed them outside. The cold air hit like a slap. Celeste wrapped her arms around herself, and Jonah noticed she'd left her coat inside. He shrugged off his jacket, not the waiter's uniform jacket, but the worn denim one he'd draped over the back of a chair during his break, and held it out to her. She looked at it like he was offering her a dead fish. I'm fine. You're shivering, take it. I grew up in Minnesota. This is shorts weather. She took the jacket, put it on. It swallowed her small frame. Thank you. Tommy and his crew stood in a rough semicircle, and Jonah could feel the potential energy in them, like a storm that hadn't decided yet whether to break or blow past. He poured coffee, handed mugs around. Nobody drank, but everyone held them, hands wrapped around ceramic warmth. Okay, Jonah said. I did my part. You're out here, you've got Ms. Hand's attention, and nobody's going to jail. Yet. So talk. But Tommy, you lead this. Keep your boys calm. Can you do that? Tommy nodded slowly. Yeah, I can do that. He turned to Celeste, and the look on his face, God, Jonah had seen that look before. On mothers who'd lost children to gang violence. On fathers who'd watched their kids disappear into addiction. It was the look of someone whose world had shattered, and who was holding on to the pieces with bleeding hands, refusing to let go, because letting go meant accepting it was really gone. Dawson Steel, Tommy said, you invested $40 million, promised to modernize the facility, expand operations, create new positions. We believed you. We bought houses based on that promise. Started families. My wife, Jessica, she quit her job because I was making enough for both of us, and she wanted to go back to school, finish her degree. She had 6 months left before she graduated. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, held it up. The screen showed a woman in a hospital bed, emaciated, tubes running from her arms, but smiling. God, she was smiling. That was 2 weeks ago. She weighs 93 pounds. The doctors say maybe another month. Maybe. Celeste's face remained impassive, but Jonah saw her fingers tighten on the coffee mug. 18 months, Beta said, his voice rough. That's how long your investment lasted. 18 months. Then one day, we show up to work, and there's a sign on the door. Facility closed, liquidation sale. Check your final paychecks in the mail. After 23 years, that's how I found out I was unemployed. A fucking sign. I have 3 kids, Gamma added, speaking for the first time. His voice was younger than Jonah expected, mid-30s maybe. 7, 9, and 12. Know what I told them last Christmas? That Santa was running late. You know what I told them this year? That Santa isn't real. Because I can't lie to them anymore. I can't promise them things are going to get better when I've been looking for work for 14 months, and the only offers I get are minimum wage part-time with no benefits. I made $42 an hour at Dawson. Now I deliver pizzas for tips. Delta finally spoke, his voice eerily calm. My father worked at Dawson for 37 years, took pride in his work, taught me everything I know about metalworking, about craftsmanship, about showing up every day and doing it right. He killed himself 6 months after the plant closed, left a note that said, I don't know how to be anything else. Silence. Just the ambient noise of the city and the wind moving through the patio furniture. Celeste set down her coffee mug very carefully. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. I'm sorry for your losses, genuinely, But you need to understand something. I'm not a charity. I'm an investor. Dawson Steele's management presented me with projections that didn't pan out. The market shifted. Demand dropped. The facility was hemorrhaging money. If I'd kept funding it, I would have lost everything I'd invested, and the company would have gone bankrupt anyway. At least liquidation returned some capital to stakeholders. Stakeholders, Tommy repeated, his voice hollow. Is that what we were? Not people. Not families. Stakeholders. That's business, Celeste said. You can't take it personally. My wife is dying, Tommy said, each word precise and terrible. How the fuck am I supposed to not take that personally? The air pressure changed. Jonah felt it, that shift from words to violence, from confrontation to crisis. Delta's hands came out of his pockets, and Jonah saw what he'd been hiding, not a weapon. Worse. Photographs. He spread them on the patio table like tarot cards predicting disaster. These are the guys from our crew who couldn't make it tonight, Delta said. Marcus Chen overdosed 3 months after the closure. Sarah Mitchell drove her car off a bridge. No note, but everyone knows. Jorge Ramirez, heart attack at 41 because he couldn't afford his blood pressure medication anymore. And 17 others. He looked at Celeste with eyes that held no anger, just an absolute zero of feeling that was somehow more frightening. 19 dead. That's not business, Ms. Hahn. That's a body count. Celeste stared at the photographs. Jonah watched her face, saw something crack in that perfect mask. I didn't know, she whispered. Would it have mattered? Beta asked. Celeste closed her eyes. I don't know. Jonah had been a cop long enough to know when someone was genuinely shocked and when they were performing. This was real. Whatever Celeste Hahn had told herself about Dawson Steele, whatever justification she'd wrapped herself in, she'd never connected her business decision to these faces, these names, these lives. Here's what's going to happen, Tommy said, and his voice had changed, gone flat and final. You're going to give each of us $200,000. Severance pay, compensation, blood money. I don't care what you call it. That covers Jessica's medical bills and funeral expenses. Covers Steve's kids' education, covers Darren's therapy, covers Mike's father's death benefits that should have gone to him. $200,000 times 4. That's $800,000. That's pocket change to you. That's extortion, Celeste said. That's justice, Beta countered. Call the cops. Please, let's get all this on record. Let's get the news involved. Let's talk about how Hancorp destroys communities and walks away clean. I'm sure your stockholders will love that. Celeste looked at Jonah, and for the first time since he'd started working at the Opal Room, he saw her as something other than the Ice Queen billionaire. He saw her as what she was, a woman in her early 30s who'd climbed so high she'd forgotten what the ground looked like, who'd made decisions from such altitude that she never saw them land. What do you think? She asked him. Jonah felt everyone's eyes turn to him. He thought about the easy answer, the safe answer. Thought about Emma waiting at home with Mrs. Chen, probably asleep on the couch with her favorite stuffed elephant. Thought about the purple bicycle with the white basket. Thought about all those times he'd taken the easy way, the safe way, and how it had landed him here, a former cop working as a waiter, hiding from his past, afraid of his future. I think, Jonah said slowly, that you're both wrong. Tommy's eyes narrowed. What? You're wrong, Jonah said to Tommy, because extortion doesn't fix anything. You'll get your money, spend it, and in a year or 5 or 10, you'll be right back where you are now because the money's gone and the skills you built your life on are still obsolete. And you, he turned to Celeste, are wrong because you think this is about money. It's not. It's about meaning. These men didn't just lose their jobs, they lost their purpose, their identity, their place in the world. You can't buy that back with a check. Then what do we do? Celeste asked. Jonah thought about it. Thought about his own years on the force, how he tried to solve problems with rules and regulations, with arrests and citations, and how he'd learned slowly and painfully that most problems couldn't be solved that way. That people needed something more fundamental than solutions. They needed to be seen, heard, acknowledged. You give them what they actually need, Jonah said. Not money, opportunity. You hire them. You create positions in your company that use their skills. You build a retraining program that helps them transition to whatever the future economy needs.
You make them stakeholders in the real sense, people with a stake in their own future and the power to shape it. That's insane, Celeste said. I can't just create jobs out of nothing. You're a billionaire venture capitalist, Jonah countered. Creating value out of nothing is literally your job description. Tommy laughed, a bitter, broken sound.
And what? We're supposed to trust her after everything? No, Jonah said. You're supposed to trust yourselves. Trust that you have skills worth something. Trust that you can learn and adapt. Trust that you're more than the worst thing that ever happened to you. He looked at each of them in turn. I know about losing everything. I was a cop for 12 years, made detective, had commendations, partnerships, a career I built my whole identity around. Then I made one mistake, one judgment call that went wrong. And everything I was just stopped. I spent 2 years drowning in what I'd lost. But you know what I learned? The only way out is through. You can't go back. You can't get revenge. You can only build something new. Easy for you to say, Beta muttered. Is it? Jonah pulled up his sleeve, showed them the scar that ran from his wrist to his elbow. That's from the night I tried to make it stop hurting. Emma found me. She was 4 years old, and she found her daddy bleeding out in the bathroom. She called 911 herself because I'd taught her how. You want to talk about consequences? About living with the worst version of yourself? I see it every time I look at my daughter and remember what I almost took from her. The silence that followed felt different, heavier but cleaner, like a wound finally exposed to air. Why should we believe she'll do anything? Tommy asked quietly. Because I'll make sure she does, Jonah said. I'll quit here. I'll work for her. I'll be the liaison between you and Handcorp. I'll make it my personal mission to ensure that every promise made tonight is kept. And if she screws you over, I'll help you take her down. Legally, publicly, completely. Celeste stared at him. You're volunteering to work for me? You don't even know me. I know enough, Jonah said. I know you didn't come out here planning to have your conscience activated. I know you could have called security 10 minutes ago. I know you're still here because some part of you recognizes that these men are right. Not about the extortion, but about being owed something more than a signature on a termination notice. And if I say no? Celeste asked. Jonah shrugged. Then I walk back inside, Marcus calls the cops, these gentlemen get arrested, you get your name dragged through every newspaper and social media platform in the country, and everyone loses. But I don't think you're going to say no, because I think you're better than the person who pulled out of Dawson's Steel without looking back. And I think you know it too. Celeste wrapped Jonah's jacket tighter around her shoulders. She looked at the photographs still spread on the table. 19 faces, 19 stories, 19 lives that had ended because of a decision she'd made from the comfort of a boardroom. Okay, she said finally. Here's what I'll do. I'll create a division within Handcorp, Community Development and Workforce Transition. Its mission will be identifying workers displaced by economic shifts and providing them with retraining, job placement, and support services. The 4 of you will be the first participants and, if you choose, eventual employees helping to run the program. You'll have full benefits, competitive salaries based on your experience levels, and equity stakes in the division's success. I want that in writing, Tommy said. Contracts, legal and binding. You'll have it by Monday, Celeste agreed, and I want it on record. I'm doing this not because I was threatened, but because it's the right thing to do. Something I should have done 14 months ago. Delta gathered up the photographs carefully, reverently. What about the families who lost people? The ones who can't work? Scholarship fund, Celeste said without hesitation. For their children. And a memorial. Something permanent. At the old Dawson site, so no one forgets what was lost. Tommy extended his hand. Celeste took it. They shook, and Jonah saw both of them holding on a little longer than necessary, as if sealing something more than a business agreement. I'll need your information, Celeste said. All of you. Phone numbers, addresses, current employment status, and I'll need... She looked at Jonah. I'll need you. Actually, that position you volunteered for, I'm making it official. Community Relations Manager. $75,000 to start, full benefits, and you work directly with me to make sure this program succeeds. Deal? Jonah thought about Emma. Thought about the purple bicycle and the Christmas morning he'd been planning and the small, safe life he'd been building.
Thought about the man he used to be and the man he'd been running from. Deal, he said, but I want 80,000 and Thursdays off to volunteer at Emma's school. Celeste smiled, a real smile, not the corporate one. Done. They went back inside together, all 6 of them, and the restaurant slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Marcus pulled Jonah aside as Celeste settled her bill. What the hell just happened? Marcus demanded. Something good, Jonah said. I think. Maybe. Ask me in 6 months. The owner is going to want a full report. Tell him I prevented a lawsuit, some very bad publicity, and possibly a violent incident. Tell him he's welcome. Celeste stopped at the door on her way out. Jonah? Thank you, I mean it. You could have walked away. No, Jonah said. I really couldn't. After she left, after Tommy and his crew left, after the restaurant finally closed and Jonah was hanging up his apron for what he realized was probably the last time, Marcus sat down with him at the bar. You're really leaving? Marcus asked. Yeah, I think so. You were a good waiter, terrible at remembering to polish the silverware, but good with people. Thanks. Can I ask you something? Why did you really do it? The whole negotiation thing. It wasn't just about keeping your job. Jonah thought about how to explain it. About the years he'd spent running from who he was. About Emma asking him every night about the stories from his police days, and him changing the subject because those memories hurt too much. About the weight of living half a life, hiding half himself. Because, Jonah said finally, I was tired of being afraid. Tired of being small. Tired of pretending that serving food was enough when I used to serve something bigger. And maybe I wanted Emma to see that her dad could still be brave, still be useful, still be someone worth looking up to. Marcus nodded slowly. That's a good reason. Yeah, Jonah agreed. Yeah, it is. He walked home through streets slick with late November rain, hands in his pockets, mind racing through everything that had just happened. Somewhere in the city, Tommy Briggs was probably lying awake next to his dying wife, holding her hand, whispering about a future that suddenly existed again. Somewhere, Celeste Hahn was probably in her penthouse, staring at contracts and wondering what the hell she'd just committed to. And somewhere, 3 other men were allowing themselves to hope for the first time in 14 months. Mrs. Chen met him at the door, finger to her lips. She's asleep on your bed. Wouldn't go down in her own room. Said she was waiting for you. Thanks, Mrs. Chen. What do I owe you? Dinner and the story of why you look like you just fought a war. Deal. Tomorrow night? After Mrs. Chen left, Jonah stood in the doorway of his bedroom, watching Emma sleep. She'd kicked off her blankets, sprawled diagonally across the bed with her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. Her hair was a mess. She had marker stains on her fingers. She was perfect. He thought about the conversation he'd have with her tomorrow, about the new job, about the changes coming, about how sometimes being brave meant doing the thing that scared you most. But for now, he just tucked the blankets around her, kissed her forehead, and whispered, I'm home, baby girl. Daddy's home. And for the first time in years when he said it, he meant something more than just the apartment. He meant himself. The old Jonah, the cop, the man who could look at chaos and find order, who could stand between violence and victims and negotiate peace. That man was still there, still alive, still useful. Tomorrow, he'd start figuring out how to be both men at once, the father and the fighter, the waiter and the warrior, the man who ran away and the man who ran toward. But tonight he just sat on the edge of the bed, watching his daughter breathe, and let himself feel something he hadn't allowed in a very long time. Pride. Not in what he'd been, not in what he'd lost, but in what he'd done tonight, in the choice he'd made to step forward instead of back, to risk instead of retreat, to believe that maybe, just maybe, people could be better than their worst moments, even him, especially him. The rain tapped against the window like applause. Emma stirred, murmured something about purple bicycles and Christmas morning. Jonah smiled. You'll get your bike, sweetheart, he promised quietly, and a lot more besides, because your daddy just remembered how to fight for things that matter. Outside, the city hummed its endless song. Somewhere in it, lives were changing, futures were being rewritten,
And Jonah Carter, former cop, current waiter, future community relations manager, sat in his small apartment with his sleeping daughter and felt the universe shift just slightly in a better direction. Sometimes, he thought, timing isn't cruel at all. Sometimes it's perfect. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline cold that made everything look sharper, more real. Jonah stood outside Hancorp Tower at 7:45, 15 minutes early because old habits died hard, staring up at 53 floors of steel and glass that caught the sunrise and threw it back in shades of gold and amber. Emma had drawn him a good luck card that morning, a stick figure labeled Daddy wearing a cape, standing next to a smaller stick figure labeled Me, who was riding what was either a purple bicycle or possibly a mutant grape with wheels. The artwork was questionable, but the message in her careful 6-year-old handwriting made his chest tight. You are my superhero. He tucked it into his jacket pocket before leaving, and now his fingers found it, traced the crayon lines through the fabric like a talisman. You going in, or are you planning to become a statue? Jonah turned to find Tommy Briggs standing beside him, looking uncomfortable in new khakis and a button-down shirt that still had the fold creases in it. The other 3 men stood behind him, Steve, Darren, and Mike, all dressed in variations of business casual that sat on them like costumes. Wasn't sure you'd show, Jonah said. Tommy shrugged. Jessica told me I'd be an idiot not to. Said if I screwed this up because of pride, she'd haunt me from the grave. His smile didn't reach his eyes. She's got 3 weeks left. Maybe 4. Doctor started using words like comfortable and dignity. You know what that means. Yeah, Jonah said quietly. I know what that means. They stood there together, 5 men who'd taken different roads to the same desperate intersection, all of them bound by the peculiar intimacy of having survived their worst moments and lived to face the aftermath. What if this is bullshit? Steve asked suddenly. What if we get up there and it's all just lawyers and waivers and, sorry, the position has been eliminated? Then we walk out, Jonah said. But we give her the chance to make good on her word. That's the deal. You really trust her? Darren's voice carried skepticism like a weight. No, Jonah admitted, but I trust that she doesn't want to be the villain in her own story. And I trust that she's smart enough to know that making enemies of the people who know where the bodies are buried is bad business. Mike laughed, sharp and bitter. There's that cop talk. Bodies buried. My dad's body is buried. Gate of Heaven Cemetery, plot C47. That's where your investment strategy put him, Ms. Han. Save it for inside, Tommy said. We do this professional. We do this right. We don't give her an excuse to back out because we came in hot. They rode the elevator in silence, watching the numbers climb. The lobby had been all marble and minimalism, a temple to corporate achievement where even the air felt expensive. Jonah noticed the security guard tracking them with eyes that had seen military service, the way his hand rested near his belt where the panic button would be. Old instincts cataloging details, building threat assessments. The elevator doors opened on the 47th floor into a reception area that could have doubled as a modern art museum. Everything was white and chrome and sharp angles. A receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine glanced up from her computer with a smile that was welcoming and dismissive in equal measure. Good morning, gentlemen. You must be the 8 o'clock appointments. Ms. Han is expecting you in conference room A. Straight down the hall, last door on your left. They walked down a corridor lined with glass-walled offices where people in expensive suits typed on computers and talked on phones, conducting the mysterious business of making money from money. Jonah caught fragments of conversation, quarterly projections and market volatility and asset reallocation, words that meant nothing and everything depending on whose life they impacted. Conference room A was enormous, dominated by a table that could seat 20 and windows that offered a view of the city sprawling toward the horizon. Celeste Han stood at those windows, silhouetted against the morning light, and when she turned, Jonah barely recognized her. Gone was the designer silk and the carefully constructed armor of wealth. She wore simple black slacks and a gray sweater, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked younger somehow, more human, like she'd shed a costume and emerged as something closer to who she actually was. Gentlemen, she said, thank you for coming. Please sit. They arranged themselves around the table with the awkward caution of soldiers accepting a ceasefire they didn't quite trust.
Celeste took the seat at the head of the table, and Jonah noticed she'd positioned herself so the light was behind her. Power play, intentional or not. "I'll be direct," Celeste began. "I spent the weekend with my legal team, my CFO, and my board of directors. The consensus was that I'd made a terrible decision Friday night, that I'd let emotion override business sense, that creating an entire division based on a confrontation in a restaurant patio was, and I quote, fucking insane." Steve started to stand. Tommy's hand on his arm stopped him. "I told them," Celeste continued, her voice steady, "that they were absolutely right. It is insane. It's also necessary. Because I looked at the data, gentlemen, really looked at it. Do you know how many communities have been impacted by Handcorp investment decisions over the past 5 years? 17. Do you know how many jobs were lost in total? 4,263. Do you know how many of those people found equivalent employment within a year? 11%. The numbers hung in the air like an indictment. "I built my career on being smart," Celeste said, "on making the hard choices, on understanding that business isn't personal. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that numbers represent people, that every percentage point is someone's mortgage, someone's marriage, someone's life. So yes, creating this division is insane. But continuing to operate the way I have been, that's worse than insane. That's willfully cruel." She opened a folder, distributed packets around the table. Jonah glanced at his contracts, benefit summaries, organizational charts. "This is the Community Development and Workforce Transition Division," Celeste explained. "Its mission is threefold: identify communities at risk from economic disruption, provide comprehensive support services for displaced workers, and create sustainable pathways to new employment. You four will form the core leadership team, reporting directly to Jonah, who reports directly to me." "What's the catch?" Tommy asked. "The catch is that you'll work harder than you've ever worked in your lives. The catch is that you'll be evaluated quarterly and held to the same standards as every other Handcorp employee. The catch is that this isn't charity, it's an investment, and I expect returns measured in lives rebuilt and communities stabilized. The catch is that you'll have to trust me when I say I'm committed to making this succeed, even when it gets difficult." "And when you decide the division isn't profitable enough," Steve challenged. "When the numbers don't add up and some consultant tells you to cut losses? What happens then?" Celeste met his gaze without flinching. "Then you'll have ironclad contracts that guarantee 12 months severance and full benefits continuation. Then you'll have the skills and experience from working here to land on your feet. And then you'll have proof that Celeste Hahn keeps her promises, even when it costs her." Mike leaned forward. "My father's memorial, the scholarship fund. Are those real?" "They're real. The memorial will break ground in March at the old Dawson site. The scholarship fund is already established, $2 million endowment managed by an independent board. It'll provide 4-year college scholarships to children of displaced workers from any company impacted by Handcorp decisions. 10 scholarships per year, indefinitely." "Jesus," Darren whispered. "It's not enough," Celeste said quietly. "It doesn't bring anyone back. It doesn't undo the harm, but it's what I can do. It's what I will do." Jonah had been watching her carefully, using every interrogation skill he'd ever learned to read body language, vocal patterns, micro-expressions. Everything he saw told him the same thing. She meant it. Whatever had cracked open in her Friday night was still open, still raw, still honest. "I have a question," Jonah said. "Why me?" "You could hire an experienced HR director, a professional mediator, someone with actual credentials in community relations. Why trust this to a former cop who's been slinging salmon for minimum wage?" Celeste turned those sharp eyes on him. "Because you saw what needed to happen when everyone else was preparing for violence. Because you had nothing to gain and everything to lose, and you did it anyway. Because my people are very, very good at making money, but none of them would have thought to ask about a purple bicycle with a white basket." She paused. "And because I called your former captain, Dan Morrison, 7th Precinct. He spent 45 minutes telling me about Officer Jonah Carter, 12 years of service, 98% case closure rate, 3 commendations for valor, 2 for community service. He told me about the night you talked a suicidal teenager off a bridge, about the domestic violence case where you found housing for the victim and her 3 kids,
about the way you could walk into chaos and make people feel safe. Jonah's throat tightened. He tell you about why I left? He told me you made a judgment call that resulted in a suspect being injured, that you were cleared of wrongdoing but couldn't forgive yourself, that you resigned before anyone could stop you. He also said you were the best cop he ever trained, and losing you was the department's loss. Celeste's expression softened. We all have things we can't forgive ourselves for, Jonah. The question is whether we let those things define us or whether we use them to become better. So this is what? Redemption? Steve's voice dripped sarcasm. We're all going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya while pretending that a fancy job title fixes everything? No, Tommy said, surprising everyone. This is a chance. This is more than we had on Friday. This is Jessica getting to see me go to work one more time in something other than a pizza delivery uniform. This is me telling her I'm going to be okay after she's gone. So yeah, maybe it doesn't fix everything, but it fixes enough. Steve looked at Tommy for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, yeah, I'm in. Me too, Darren added. Mike was the last holdout. He stared at the contract in front of him like it might bite him. I need a guarantee. About the memorial. I need to know my father's name will be on it, that people will remember he existed, that he mattered. First name on the list, Celeste promised. Centered, bold. I'll send you the design mock-ups for approval before we begin construction. Mike picked up the pen with a hand that shook slightly and signed his name in careful, deliberate letters. The others followed, one by one, until all 4 contracts bore signatures. Welcome to Handcorp, Celeste said. Jonah will orient you this week. You start officially next Monday. In the meantime, I need you to start thinking about what support services displaced workers actually need. Not what consultants think they need, not what looks good in a press release. What would have helped you when Dawson closed? Time, Tommy said immediately. More time before the hammer fell. If I'd had warning, I could have saved money, started looking for work, prepared. Communication, Steve added. Someone to talk to who wasn't a robot on a customer service line. Someone who gave a damn. Training that wasn't bullshit, Darren said. Every workforce development program I applied to wanted to teach me to code or get certified in hospitality. I'm a machinist. I don't want to write software or serve coffee. I want to work with my hands. Where's the program for that? Healthcare, Mike said quietly. My dad needed his medications, needed his doctor. Lost both when he lost his insurance. That's what killed him as much as anything else. He just gave up when he realized he couldn't afford to be sick anymore. Celeste was taking notes, actually writing by hand on a legal pad. Okay, so we build a program with 4 pillars. Early warning systems to identify at-risk facilities, dedicated case managers for personalized support, industry-specific training that respects existing skills, and healthcare continuation support. What else? They spent the next 2 hours building the framework for something that had never existed before. 5 people from completely different worlds finding common ground in shared purpose. Jonah watched it happen with a kind of wonder, the way Tommy's natural leadership emerged once he felt heard, the way Steve's skepticism transformed into strategic thinking, the way Darren's quiet observations cut through bullshit to practical solutions, the way Mike's grief channeled itself into determination that no one else would lose what he'd lost. And Celeste, taking it all in, asking questions that proved she was actually listening, pushing back when ideas weren't feasible, but never dismissing them outright, treating these 4 men like the experts they were on the subject of their own lives. We should have representation, Tommy said suddenly. From the communities we serve, not just us making decisions for people like us, but people like us at every level of the organization. Advisory board, Celeste agreed. Quarterly meetings, voting power on major initiatives. I'll have legal draft the structure. When they finally broke for lunch, Jonah found himself alone with Celeste in the conference room, looking out at the city below. You think this can work? She asked. I think it has to work, Jonah replied. Because if it doesn't, you've given 4 men hope and then crushed it again. And that's worse than never giving them hope in the first place. No pressure. You're a billionaire CEO. Pressure is your love language. She laughed, surprised. Fair point. Then more seriously, I meant what I said about you being the best person for this job. I've spent 10 years surrounding myself with people who tell me what I want to hear. I need someone who'll tell me what I need to hear.
Even if it pisses you off? Especially then. Jonah studied her, this woman who'd somehow become the axis around which 5 lives were currently pivoting. Why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's about being better or making amends. There's something else. Celeste was quiet for a long time, staring out at the city. My father, she said finally. He was a factory worker, killed in an industrial accident when I was 8. Company blamed him, denied benefits, fought my mother in court for 3 years. We lost everything. House, savings, any chance at stability. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. Died of a heart attack at 49. She turned to look at Jonah. I built Handcorp because I swore I'd never be powerless again, never be at the mercy of people who saw me as expendable. But somewhere along the way, I became the thing I hated. I became the person who makes other people powerless. So this is about your father. This is about everyone's father, everyone's mother, everyone's family that gets sacrificed on the altar of quarterly earnings reports and shareholder value. She smiled, but there was pain in it. And yeah, maybe it's about trying to become someone my father would have been proud of instead of someone he would have fought against. The honesty of it hit Jonah like a physical thing. He thought about his own father, dead from lung cancer when Jonah was 19, a plumber who'd worked himself to exhaustion and died without ever seeing his son make detective. Thought about the weight of living up to ghosts, of trying to justify your existence to people who couldn't answer anymore. He would have been proud, Jonah said, of this, of what you're trying to build. Maybe. Or maybe he would have said I should have done it years ago, that 19 people shouldn't have had to die before I figured out that numbers have names. They stood there together, 2 people carrying different versions of the same guilt, and Jonah felt something shift between them. Not attraction, or not just attraction, but recognition. The way soldiers recognized each other years after war.
The way survivors recognized each other after tragedy. They'd both been broken by their choices and were both trying to build something worthwhile from the pieces. Come on, Celeste said. Let me buy you lunch. Actual lunch, not whatever you were eating from the staff kitchen at the Opal Room. They ended up at a deli 3 blocks away, the kind of place where you ordered at a counter and ate at wobbly tables, and nobody gave a damn about your net worth. Celeste ordered pastrami on rye. Jonah got a Reuben. They sat in a corner booth surrounded by construction workers and office drones and students, anonymous in the best way. This is nice, Celeste said. I usually eat at my desk. Let me guess, salads delivered from places with names like Verdant or Harvest Moon. Close. Place called Nourish. Everything's locally sourced and costs $30. How's it taste? Like virtue signaling. She took a massive bite of her sandwich, got mustard on her chin, laughed. God, this is actual food. When did I forget about actual food? Probably around the same time you forgot that numbers have names. She sobered at that. You're not going to let me off easy, are you? You hired me to tell you what you need to hear. Consider this your first lesson. You don't get credit for fixing problems you created. You only get credit for preventing them from happening again. Harsh. True. Both things can be true. She wiped her chin with a napkin. Tell me about your daughter, Emma, right? 6 years old, smart as hell, obsessed with butterflies and outer space, and for some reason, competitive baking shows. Wants to be an astronaut pastry chef when she grows up. That's very specific. She's a very specific kid. Jonah pulled out his phone, showed Celeste the good luck card Emma had drawn. She made this for me this morning. Celeste studied it, and something in her expression went soft. You're her superhero. I'm trying to be. It's harder than it looks. Being a parent? Being worthy of her faith in me. Jonah put the phone away. Her mother left when Emma was 2, just walked out one morning and never came back. I was so deep in my own darkness then that I barely noticed until Emma started asking where Mommy went. I've spent 4 years trying to be enough parent for both of us, but there are nights when I lie awake terrified that I'm screwing her up. That one day she'll realize her superhero is just a guy who couldn't save his marriage, couldn't save his career, couldn't even save himself until she did it for him. But you're still here,
Celeste said. Still trying. That's what matters. Is it? Or am I just teaching her that trying is enough when the world's going to expect her to actually succeed? You're teaching her that failure isn't fatal, that you can lose everything and still build something worth having. That's not a small lesson, Jonah.
They finished their sandwiches in comfortable silence, and Jonah realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this. Seen. Not judged, not pitied, just acknowledged in all his complicated humanity. Walking back to Hancorp Tower, Celeste's phone rang. She glanced at it, made a face. My mother. She calls every Monday like clockwork to tell me I'm working too hard and need to find a husband. You going to answer? Not while I'm having a good day. But there was fondness in her voice, love mixed with exasperation. She proud of you? Of what you've built? Celeste considered it. She's proud that I'm not poor. Everything else is secondary. She survived poverty, and she made sure I would never have to. That was her gift to me. Whether I use that security to do good or just accumulate more security, I don't think that matters to her as much as the fact that I'm safe. And are you? Safe? I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have security teams and legal teams and PR teams. I have power and influence and respect. She paused at the tower's entrance. And I have no idea who I'd call if I needed someone to just talk to at 3 in the morning when the insomnia hits. So, no. I'm not safe, I'm just insulated. There's a difference? Safety is when you can be vulnerable without being destroyed. Insulation is when you avoid vulnerability altogether. I'm very, very insulated. Jonah thought about his apartment, small and cluttered, and filled with Emma's drawings. Thought about Mrs. Chen knowing his coffee order. Thought about Marcus from the Opal room checking in after that Friday night to make sure Jonah was okay. Thought about being poor in pocket, but rich in connection, and how he'd never quite understood that trade-off until now. Maybe that's something else we can both work on, he said, learning to be safe instead of just insulated. Celeste smiled, and it transformed her face. Is that part of your job description, providing amateur therapy to your boss? It's called community relations. You're part of the community. Technically, I'm killing it at my job already. They rode the elevator back up, and Jonah spent the rest of the afternoon in meetings with HR about benefits and office space and technology needs. He signed forms until his hand cramped. He received a laptop, an access badge, a phone number, an email address. He became real in the corporate architecture, granted existence by the accumulation of credentials. At 6 o'clock, he headed home, taking the train through a city that looked different now. Not better or worse, just different. Like he was seeing it from a new angle, discovering neighborhoods he'd walked past 1,000 times but never really noticed. Emma met him at the door, launched herself at his legs. Daddy, did you have a good first day? Did you save anyone? Did you wear your cape? He scooped her up, held her tight. I wore my invisible cape, the one only smart 6-year-olds can see. I'm not 6 anymore. I'm 6 1/4. My mistake, 6 1/4, practically grown up. Mrs. Chen emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. There's lasagna in the oven, and this arrived for you. She handed him an envelope, heavy cardstock, expensive. Inside was a note in elegant handwriting. Thank you for today, for your honesty, your compassion, and your terrible jokes about food. I think we're going to build something important together. CH. Tucked beneath the note was a check. Jonah stared at the amount, counted the zeros twice to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. $20,000. Holy shit, he whispered. That's a bad word, Emma informed him. You owe the swear jar 50 cents. The note continued on the back. Signing bonus. Buy the bicycle. Buy 10 bicycles. Take your daughter somewhere special, and next time we have lunch, it's your turn to pick the place. Jonah sat down heavily on the couch, Emma still in his arms, staring at a piece of paper that represented 6 months of rent, a year of groceries, security he hadn't felt since before everything fell apart. Daddy, are you crying? No, baby girl, I'm just... He wasn't sure how to explain it, how to put into words the feeling of being seen, being valued, being trusted with something bigger than himself. I'm just really happy. Did you get me my bicycle? He laughed, kissed the top of her head. Yeah, Emma, you're getting your bicycle. And you know what? We're going to get you whatever color you want. Purple, pink, blue, rainbow, anything. I want purple with a white basket, like I said before. Purple with a white basket, coming right up. That night, after Emma was asleep, Jonah sat at his kitchen table with a beer and the check and the note, thinking about the distance between Friday night and Monday evening. Thinking about Tommy visiting his dying wife with news of a future. Thinking about Steve and Darren and Mike, all of them breathing a little easier. Thinking about Celeste trying to build a bridge between who she'd been and who she wanted to become. He thought about his father, about Detective Morrison, about all the people who'd believed in him before he'd stopped believing in himself. And he thought about Emma's good luck card, still in his jacket pocket, a stick figure superhero drawn by someone who had every reason to stop believing, but never did. His phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. Jessica wants to meet you. Can you come by the hospital tomorrow? She's having a good day. Jonah typed back. What time? Whenever you can. Room 412. She'll be up all day. I'll be there at lunch. Another text, this one from Celeste. Question. Should the advisory board have veto power or just recommendatory authority? Thoughts? He smiled, started typing a response, then stopped. Called her instead. She answered on the second ring. Jonah? Everything okay? Question for you. You ever actually turn off? Like, stop being CEO Celeste Ahan and just be a person? Silence. Then, I don't remember how. Learn, he said. That's not a suggestion. That's a condition of my employment. You want me to build this program right, you need to be a person while we do it, not a corporation in expensive shoes. That's pretty direct. I'm practicing my community relations skills. How am I doing? She laughed, and it sounded genuine. Terrible. Also, effective. Also, I appreciate it, even though I want to fire you a little bit right now. To answer your question, veto power, with oversight. They can block initiatives they think will cause harm, but they have to provide reasoning and alternative solutions. That way they're partners, not just rubber stamps. That's actually a good idea. I have them sometimes. Jonah? Yeah? Thank you for the check comment, for the lunch, for being willing to tell me I'm wrong. I haven't had that in a long time. You're welcome. Now go to bed. It's almost 11, and tomorrow you have meetings about quarterly projections or market volatility or whatever rich people meetings are about. Asset reallocation, actually. Even worse, definitely go to bed. She hung up, and Jonah sat in his quiet kitchen, feeling like the universe had shifted slightly on its axis in a way that mattered. Like maybe the distance between who he'd been and who he could become wasn't as vast as he'd thought. Like maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about building something better on top of it. He deposited the check using his phone's camera, watched the numbers appear in his account balance like magic, and allowed himself to feel something he'd rationed carefully for years. Hope. Not the desperate kind, the kind that required everything to go perfectly, but the steady kind, the kind that acknowledged things would be hard and messy and complicated and still believed they could work out. That was enough. For tonight, for tomorrow, for whatever came next. That was enough. The hospital smelled like industrial cleaner trying to mask something worse underneath. Jonah had been in dozens of hospitals during his years on the force. Crime scenes, witness interviews, notifications to families whose lives had just shattered, and the smell never changed. It was the smell of endings dressed up as medicine. Room 412 was at the end of a long corridor where fluorescent lights hummed their monotonous song. Jonah carried flowers he'd bought from the bodega on the corner. Nothing fancy, just daisies because they looked hopeful, and hope felt like the right currency for this moment. He paused outside the door, hearing voices within, Tommy's low rumble and a woman's lighter tone, speaking in rhythms that suggested a conversation they'd had 1,000 times before. He knocked softly. The voices stopped. "Come in," Tommy called. Jessica Briggs looked nothing like the photograph Tommy had shown them that night on the patio, and yet she looked exactly like it. The hospital bed diminished her, tubes and monitors creating a mechanical forest around her small frame, but her eyes were bright and alert and filled with the kind of fierce intelligence that terminal illness couldn't touch. "You must be Jonah," she said, her voice thin but steady. "Tommy's told me all about you, the cop who became a waiter who became a savior. Quite the resume." I'm not sure savior is the right word, Jonah said, setting the flowers on the windowsill next to a collection of cards and photographs. More like a guy who was in the right place at the right time with the right words. That's called grace, Jessica said. Whether you believe in that kind of thing or not. Tommy stood from the chair beside the bed, gestured for Jonah to take it. I'll grab us some coffee. You two can talk without me hovering. After Tommy left, Jonah sat down carefully, aware he was in sacred space, a marriage's final chapter, witnessed by machines that beeped their clinical commentary. He's terrified, Jessica said simply, of losing me, obviously, but more than that, of losing himself. Tommy's whole identity is wrapped up in being a provider, a protector. When Dawson closed, it didn't just take his job, it took his sense of purpose. You gave that back to him. Celeste Hahn gave it back to him. I just facilitated. Don't do that. Don't minimize what you did. Jessica's hand, impossibly fragile, reached toward him. Jonah took it gently, feeling bird bones beneath papery skin. I'm dying, Jonah. I know it. Tommy knows it. Everyone knows it. And the only thing making it bearable is knowing that when I'm gone, he'll have a reason to get up in the morning, that he'll have people counting on him, that he won't just disappear into grief. Jonah's throat tightened. He's stronger than you think. He's exactly as strong as I think, which is why I know he'll need that structure, that purpose, that community you're building. Promise me you'll look after him, not like a charity case, but like a partner. He needs to feel useful, Jonah. He needs to matter. He does matter. You both do. Jessica smiled, and despite the circumstances, it was radiant. You're a good man. Tommy said you had a daughter. What's her name? Emma. She's 6 and a quarter, according to her. 6 is a magic age. Old enough to understand the world, young enough to believe in magic. Hold on to that as long as you can. Make her believe she can be anything, do anything. Don't let the world make her small. They talked for another 20 minutes, Jessica asking questions about Emma, about Jonah's plans for the division, about his hopes and fears and dreams. She had the gift of making you feel like you were the most important person in the world, like your story mattered specifically to her, and Jonah understood completely why Tommy loved her so fiercely. When Tommy returned with coffee, Jessica's energy was visibly fading. I need to rest now, she said. But, Jonah, thank you. For the flowers. For the conversation. For giving my stubborn husband a reason to thrive, instead of just survive. Outside in the hallway, Tommy leaned against the wall, coffee cup clenched in both hands. She's exhausting herself trying to make sure everyone else is okay. That's who she is. Even now. She's remarkable, Jonah said. Yeah, she is. Tommy's voice cracked. I don't know how to do this, man. How to watch her leave. How to be okay with it. You don't have to be okay with it. You just have to survive it. And then you build something from what's left. That's what she wants. That's what she needs from you. Tommy nodded, not trusting his voice. They stood there together in the hallway that smelled of endings, two men who'd both lost pieces of themselves and were learning to construct new identities from the wreckage. Come on, Jonah said. Let's get out of here. Buy you lunch. Something terrible for you that Jessica would disapprove of. She'd approve of you getting me out of this hospital. I've been here 18 hours straight. They ended up at a burger joint that served food designed to clog arteries and lift spirits in equal measure. Tommy ordered something called the Widowmaker. Triple patty, bacon, fried egg, onion rings. Jonah got a regular cheeseburger and watched Tommy attack his meal with the kind of hunger that had nothing to do with food. Steve called this morning, Tommy said between bites. He's already started working on the early warning system. Wants to build a database of facilities at risk based on investment patterns, market trends, labor statistics. Kids got ahead for data I never knew about. And the others? Darren's reaching out to vocational schools about partnership programs. Mike's drafting the memorial design. We've got our first advisory board meeting scheduled for next month. Tommy paused. It's real, Jonah. This thing we're building, it's actually real. Did you doubt it? Every minute of every day. Still do, a little. Waiting for the other shoe to drop. For someone to say it was all a mistake. Jonah understood that intimately, the waiting for disaster, the inability to trust good things because every good thing in your life had eventually turned bad. I get it, but at some point you have to accept that maybe this is just what it is, a chance to do something that matters. No hidden agenda, no catch, just hard work toward a good outcome. You really believe that? I'm trying to. Fake it till you make it and all that. Tommy laughed, the first genuine one Jonah had heard from him. Jessica said you reminded her of her father. Said you have that same quality of making people feel safe just by being in the room. What happened to him? Her father? Factory accident. Same plant where I worked before Dawson. Some safety regulation got ignored because it was expensive to fix, and boom, gone. That's why she married me, I think. Saw her father in me, loved me for all the things that reminded her of him. That's not a bad reason to love someone. No, but it's a heavy responsibility. Being loved for who someone else was. Tommy finished his burger, wiped his hands. You ever think about getting back out there? Dating? Emma could use a mother figure. Emma could use a lot of things. A mother figure who's going to disappear when the relationship doesn't work out isn't one of them. Besides, what woman wants to date a single dad who's still figuring out how to be a functional human being? You'd be surprised. Women love a project, and you clean up decent when you're not covered in restaurant grease. They headed back to Hancorp Tower, where Celeste had scheduled a strategy session for the division's first quarter goals. The conference room was already full when they arrived. Steve and Darren arguing animatedly about database architecture, Mike sketching on a whiteboard, Celeste listening with focused intensity. Gentlemen, she said when Jonah and Tommy entered. Glad you could join us. We were just discussing how to identify communities at risk before the crisis hits. Steve's got some interesting ideas about predictive analytics. Steve stood, suddenly self-conscious about commanding the room. It's not complicated, really. You look at investment patterns, quarterly reports, stock fluctuations, management changes. Companies telegraph their intentions months before they act. We just need to learn the language. And then what? Celeste asked. Say we identify a facility that's likely to close in 6 months. What's our intervention? Communication first, Jonah said. Reach out to management, understand their timeline and constraints. Maybe there's a way to make the facility viable. If not, we work with them to give workers maximum warning and transition support. The goal isn't to prevent every closure. That's not realistic. The goal is to eliminate the shock, the sudden free fall. We could offer economic consulting, Darren added. Help companies find alternatives to closure, tax incentives, efficiency improvements, market repositioning. Maybe some facilities can be saved if someone's actually trying. Mike looked up from his sketch. And for the ones that can't be saved, we document everything, names, faces, stories, make sure they're remembered, make sure it matters that they existed. Celeste was taking notes, her expression thoughtful. Okay, so we need 3 teams. Analytics and early warning, headed by Steve, economic consulting and intervention, headed by Darren, and memorial services and historical documentation, headed by Mike. Tommy, you'll coordinate between teams and manage community liaison. Jonah, you oversee everything and report to me. Does that structure work? They spent the next 3 hours building operational frameworks, arguing about budgets, debating strategies. Jonah watched his team come alive in the discussion, finding their voices, their confidence, their purpose. Steve, the data genius. Darren, the strategic thinker. Mike, the emotional core. Tommy, the leader who'd emerged from desperation into determination. And Celeste, orchestrating it all with the same fierce intelligence she'd brought to building an empire, but now directed towards something that couldn't be measured in profit margins. One more thing, Celeste said as the meeting was winding down. The memorial. I want to attend the groundbreaking, not as a photo op, as someone who needs to witness what my decisions cost. Can we make that happen? Mike studied her carefully. You understand it's not going to be comfortable, right? These families, they're angry, they're hurt. Some of them might not want you there. I know, but I think I need to feel that, need to understand it viscerally, not just intellectually. Will you help me with that? Yeah, Mike said slowly. Yeah, I can do that. After everyone left, Jonah remained behind, reviewing notes and organizing action items. Celeste joined him at the window, both of them looking out at a city that held millions of stories. most of them untold. You think we're crazy? She asked, trying to fix a problem this big with one small division? Completely insane, Jonah agreed, but every big thing starts small. Every movement begins with one person deciding enough is enough. And sometimes crazy is just another word for brave. I got a call from my board this afternoon. 3 members want to meet privately to discuss concerns about strategic direction. That's code for convince her she's making a mistake. What are you going to tell them? That they can be part of the solution or part of the past. That Handcorp is evolving whether they like it or not. That if they want to jump ship, I'll help them find lifeboats. She turned to look at him. That sounds sufficiently boss-like? Terrifying, in a good way. His phone buzzed. Emma's school. He answered immediately, heart rate spiking with the particular fear of every single parent. Mr. Carter, this is Principal Davies, nothing to worry about, but Emma had a small incident on the playground. Another child pushed her and she scraped her knee. We've cleaned it up, but she's asking for you. I'll be right there. He hung up, grabbed his jacket. I have to go. Emma needs me. Of course, go. Family first, always. Jonah made it to Emma's school in 15 minutes, finding her in the nurse's office with a bandage on her knee the size of Texas, an expression that vacillated between brave and on the verge of tears. Daddy! She launched herself at him and he caught her, held her tight. Hey, baby girl, I heard you had an adventure. Marcus pushed me because I told him his drawing was wrong, but Daddy, it was wrong. He drew a butterfly with 6 wings, and butterflies only have 4 wings. That's just science. Jonah bit back a smile. And Marcus didn't appreciate the scientific correction? He said I was a know-it-all, and then he pushed me, and I fell, and it hurt. I bet it did. But you know what? You were right about the butterfly wings. And being right doesn't mean you deserve to get pushed. That's not how conflict resolution works. What's conflict resolution? It's a fancy way of saying how people solve problems without pushing each other. He set her down gently, crouched to her level. You want to know a secret? Part of my new job is teaching people how to resolve conflicts, how to disagree without being disagreeable, how to find solutions that work for everyone. Emma's eyes went wide. You're going to teach people how to not push each other? Something like that. And maybe you can help me. You could be my consultant on conflict resolution. What's a consultant? Someone who's really smart about something and helps other people learn about it. Think you could do that? She considered it seriously. I think I could, but I would need business cards. Consultants have business cards. Deal. I'll get you business cards. They'll say, Emma Carter, conflict resolution consultant, an assistant space butterfly expert. Obviously, that goes without saying. They stopped at the bike shop on the way home, and Emma's face when she saw the purple bicycle with the white basket was something Jonah would remember forever. Pure, undiluted joy. The kind of happiness that justified every sacrifice, every struggle, every moment of doubt. Daddy, it's perfect. It's exactly perfect. The bike was too big for her. She'd grow into it. But with training wheels and some careful adjustment, it worked. They walked it home together, Emma chattering nonstop about where they'd ride, what she'd carry in the basket, how all her friends were going to be so jealous. Mrs. Chen met them at the building entrance. That's quite a bicycle. My daddy got it for me because he has a new job saving people and solving conflicts and being important. Mrs. Chen raised an eyebrow at Jonah. Is that so? Something like that, Jonah confirmed. That evening, after Emma was asleep with her stuffed elephant and dreams of bicycle adventures, Jonah sat on his fire escape with a beer, watching the city's lights blur into constellations of human activity. His phone rang. Celeste. I hope I'm not calling too late, she said, but I wanted to check in. Is Emma okay? She's fine, bruised knee, bruised ego, but fundamentally fine. How did you know? You mentioned it when you left. I've been thinking about it, about what it must be like to be a single parent, constantly worried about the other shoe dropping, constantly torn between work and family. It's a special kind of exhausting, but you make it work because you have to. I've been thinking about that too. About the division's family support policies. We should offer flexible scheduling, remote work options, emergency childcare. Make it possible for people like you to do this work without sacrificing time with their kids. That's not just good policy. That's revolutionary policy. Well, we're building something revolutionary. Might as well go all in. She paused. Jonah, can I ask you something personal? Shoot. Do you ever regret it? Having Emma? I don't mean you regret her specifically, but do you ever wish you'd had the freedom to take more risks, be more selfish, build a different life? It was the kind of question only someone without children would ask, but Jonah didn't hold it against her. Every parent has moments where they fantasize about their kid-free life, sleeping in, spontaneous travel, expendable income. But here's the thing. Emma made me better than I would have been without her. She forced me to grow up, to be responsible, to think beyond myself. Did it limit my options? Sure, but it expanded me in ways I didn't know were possible. She's the best decision I never consciously made. That's beautiful. That's parenthood. It's beautiful and terrible and exhausting and worth it, all at the same time. He took a pull from his beer. You thinking about kids? God, no. I can barely keep a houseplant alive. But I've been thinking about legacy, about what I want to leave behind when I'm gone. An empire doesn't feel like enough anymore. I want to leave something that makes people's lives better, in tangible, measurable ways. Then you're on the right track. This division, what we're building, it's the kind of legacy that lasts. Not because it has your name on it, but because it changes the equation for people who've been shut out of every other equation. They talked for another hour about everything and nothing. About Celeste's complicated relationship with her mother. About Jonah's memories of his father. About the weight of trying to be worthy of the people who believed in you, living or dead. It was the kind of conversation that happened in the dark, when guards were down and truth felt safer than performance. I should let you sleep, Celeste said eventually. But thank you. For listening, for understanding, for being someone I can be honest with. That's what friends do, Jonah said, surprised to realize he meant it. At some point, without planning it, they'd crossed from professional colleagues to something more human. Friends, Celeste repeated like she was testing the word's weight. I like that. I don't have many of those. You do now. After hanging up, Jonah sat for a while longer, thinking about friendship and legacy and the strange paths that led people to each other. 2 months ago, he'd been serving salmon to people who didn't see him. Now he was building a program that could change lives, working alongside people who'd become something like family, forming a bond with a billionaire CEO who was learning to be human again. The universe's timing was cruel, but sometimes it was also kind. His phone buzzed one more time. Tommy. Jessica had a good day today. Thanks for that. Means more than you know. Jonah typed back, anytime. Any will see, that's what friends are for. And there was that word again. Friends. It seemed to be the theme of the evening, this rediscovery of connection, this slow rebuilding of community from the wreckage of isolation. Inside the apartment, Emma stirred, called out for him. Jonah went to her, found her sitting up in bed, half asleep. Daddy, will you tell me about the people you saved today? He settled beside her, stroking her hair. Today, I visited a very brave woman named Jessica. She's sick, but she's making sure everyone around her is going to be okay after she's gone. That's a different kind of heroism. Is she a superhero too? The best kind. The kind who saves people with love instead of powers. Emma thought about that, her eyes drifting closed again. When I grow up, I want to be that kind of superhero, the love kind. You already are, baby girl. You already are. He stayed with her until she was deeply asleep, then returned to his fire escape, to his beer and his thoughts and his growing sense that maybe, finally, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Doing exactly what he was supposed to do, with exactly the people he was supposed to do it with. Below him, the city hummed its eternal song. Somewhere in it, Tommy was sitting beside Jessica's hospital bed, holding her hand through another night. Somewhere, Steve was building algorithms to predict disaster. Somewhere, Darren was drafting proposals to prevent it. Somewhere, Mike was designing memorials to ensure it was remembered. And somewhere, Celeste Hahn was sitting in her penthouse, looking out at the same city, learning to trade insulation for connection, to value impact over income, to become the person her father would have been proud of. They were all broken in their own ways, all carrying their own scars, all learning to build something beautiful from the shattered pieces of what they'd lost. That was enough. More than enough. That was everything. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that felt more like winter's threat than autumn's promise, Jonah stood in front of 47 displaced workers from 3 different facilities and tried to remember how to breathe. The community center in Riverside, the same town where Dawson Steel had once been the beating heart of the local economy, was packed beyond capacity. Metal folding chairs scraped against linoleum floors. The air smelled of coffee from industrial urns and the particular tension that came with people who'd been promised help before and learned not to trust it. Celeste stood beside him, and Jonah could feel her nervousness radiating like heat. She'd dressed down for this: jeans, a simple sweater, minimal jewelry, but there was no disguising who she was. The room knew. They all knew. Tommy stepped forward first, his voice carrying the weight of lived experience. Most of you know me, Tommy Briggs. Worked at Dawson for 18 years before it closed. Lost my house, my savings, my wife's health insurance. Some of you were there that night we confronted Ms. Hahn. You know how that ended. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Not friendly ones. Here's what you don't know, Tommy continued. In the 3 weeks since, we've built something real. A program that doesn't just throw money at the problem or offer you meaningless training in jobs that don't exist. We're offering you a partnership, a chance to rebuild not just your careers, but your communities. And yeah, Ms. Hahn is funding it. And yeah, I know that's complicated, but I'm asking you to listen, to give us 30 minutes. If you hate what you hear, walk out. No hard feelings. But at least hear us first. The room settled into reluctant attention. Jonah stepped forward, feeling 47 pairs of eyes dissecting him, weighing whether he was another corporate mouthpiece or something else. My name is Jonah Carter, he began. 3 months ago, I was a waiter at an overpriced restaurant, serving people who never saw me. Before that, I was a cop who lost his badge because I made a mistake that cost someone. Before that, I was a kid whose father worked himself to death as a plumber, convinced that the only dignity in life came from honest labor. I know what it's like to build your identity around your work. I know what it feels like when that work disappears. And I know the rage that comes when the people who took it away never have to answer for it. He saw a few heads nodding. Good. Connection before solution. Ms. Hahn is here today not to apologize. Apologies don't pay bills. But to listen. To understand what you actually need, not what some consultant's report says you need. We've got 3 team leaders who've lived through facility closures. We've got funding for retraining that respects your skills instead of erasing them. We've got healthcare continuation, emergency housing assistance, and job placement services. But more than that, we're offering you a voice in how this program develops. You tell us what works, what doesn't, what's missing, and we adjust. Because this isn't about saving Miss Hahn's reputation. This is about saving your lives. A woman in the 3rd row stood up. Late 40s, tired eyes, work-worn hands. Why should we trust anything a billionaire tells us? She made her money destroying places like this. Now she wants credit for throwing us scraps? Celeste stepped forward before Jonah could respond. You're right, she said simply. You shouldn't trust me. I haven't earned it. I made decisions that prioritize profit over people. And I'm culpable for the damage that caused. This program doesn't erase that. Nothing can. But it's what I can do now, today, going forward. And if you participate, you hold me accountable. You make sure this isn't just PR. You make sure it actually helps. My husband killed himself, another woman said, standing. Jonah recognized her from the photographs Mike had shown, Jorge Ramirez's widow. He couldn't find work, couldn't pay for his medication, couldn't see a future. You want to help? Give me back my husband. The silence that followed was absolute and devastating. I can't, Celeste said, her voice breaking slightly, and I will carry that for the rest of my life. Your husband's name will be on the memorial we're building, first page. His story will be told. His life will be honored. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's what I can offer. Maria Ramirez, that was her name, Jonah remembered now, stood there trembling, tears tracking down her face. Then she walked out. Several others followed. Jonah felt the meeting teetering on the edge of collapse. He looked at Tommy, who
who nodded imperceptibly. Tag team. Steve, Jonah called. Show them what you've built. Steve came forward with his laptop, projecting onto a screen they'd set up. This is the early warning system. It tracks investment patterns, management changes, market shifts across every major manufacturing facility in the region. See this facility here? He pointed to a factory marked in yellow. Precision Parts Manufacturing in Oakdale. Our analysis suggests they're at high risk for closure in the next 6 months. We've reached out to management. They're struggling with outdated equipment and rising costs. Instead of letting them fail, we're working with them on modernization funding and operational efficiency. Maybe we save it. Maybe we don't. But the workers there will have months of warning, not days. They'll have support starting now, not after they're already desperate. A man near the back leaned forward. What kind of support? Darren stood. Depends on what you need. Some folks want retraining for different industries. Some want help starting their own businesses. Some want relocation assistance to where the jobs are. We match services to individual situations. No cookie-cutter solutions. What about age discrimination? Someone called out. I'm 58. Nobody's hiring 58-year-olds. Then we help you become unhireable by making you self-employed, Darren said. We've got small business development services, startup capital, mentorship. You've got skills and experience. We help you monetize that independently. The questions came faster now, less hostile, more pragmatic. What about healthcare? What about retirement benefits lost? What about the gaps in employment on resumes? What about transportation to training centers? What about childcare? The team fielded each one, and Jonah watched the room slowly shift from adversarial to cautiously hopeful. Not everyone. Some remained skeptical, arms crossed, unconvinced. But enough. Enough to build momentum. After the meeting, as people lined up to fill out intake forms and schedule assessments, Maria Ramirez returned. She walked straight to Celeste, and Jonah tensed, ready to intercept if necessary. I want to help, Maria said, with the memorial. I want to make sure you get Jorge's story right, that people understand who he was before this broke him. Celeste's composure cracked. I would be honored. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just do better. Be better. Make sure no other wife buries her husband because some spreadsheet said his job wasn't profitable enough. I will. I promise you, I will. They drove back to the city in Celeste's car, none of them speaking for the first 20 minutes. Finally, Tommy broke the silence. That was brutal. That was necessary, Celeste corrected. I needed to feel that, to understand it viscerally. You handled it well, Jonah said. No corporate speak, no deflection, just honesty. Honesty doesn't bring back Maria's husband. No, but it's a starting point. It's the foundation everything else gets built on. Back at Hancorp Tower, they reconvened in the conference room that had become their war room. Whiteboards covered in strategies and timelines, tables stacked with intake forms and case files, the organized chaos of people trying to fix something massive with limited resources and unlimited determination. We got 34 signups, Steve reported. Out of 47 attendees, that's a 72% conversion rate. That's actually phenomenal. What about the 13 who didn't sign up? Celeste asked. Some walked out, some were just there to yell. A few need more time to think about it. Tommy pulled up a list. But we've got their contact information. We can follow up, address specific concerns. Mike entered the room looking exhausted but energized. I just got off the phone with 3 different families about the memorial. They want to be involved in the design process. Want to make sure it's not some generic monument, but something that tells specific stories. Then that's what we do, Celeste said. Whatever they need. Jonah's phone rang. Emma's school again. His stomach dropped into familiar parental terror. Mr. Carter, it's Principal Davies. I'm calling with good news this time. Emma's been selected for the Young Scholars Program. It's an enrichment opportunity for academically advanced students. I wanted to inform you before the letter goes out. Relief and pride collided in Jonah's chest. That's wonderful. Thank you. After he hung up, Celeste was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Everything okay? Better than okay? Emma got into some gifted program at school. She's going to be insufferable about it. Smart kid, like her dad. Smarter. She actually listens to advice. They worked until 7, then 8, then 9. Celeste ordered dinner from a Thai place nearby, and they ate at the conference table surrounded by their work, talking through logistics and challenges and small victories. I got an email from the board, Celeste said between bites of pad thai. They want a formal presentation about the division's ROI, return on investment. They want to know what we're getting for the money we're spending. What are you going to tell them? Tommy asked. That ROI isn't always measurable in quarters and percentages, that some investments pay dividends in community stability, social capital, and human dignity, that if they can't understand that, they should find another company to sit on the board of. Steve laughed. You're really going to say that? Not in those exact words, but yes, essentially. Celeste set down her fork. I didn't build this company to be liked. I built it to be effective. And right now, the most effective thing we can do is prove that capitalism doesn't have to be sociopathic, that profit and purpose aren't mutually exclusive. That's a hell of a mission statement, Darren said. It's the only one that matters. Jonah watched her, this woman who'd been so carefully constructed 3 weeks ago and was now deconstructing herself in real time, rebuilding into something more authentic and more vulnerable and infinitely more powerful. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Chen. Emma's asleep, but she wanted me to tell you she loves you and she's proud of you. Those were her exact words. He showed the text to the group. Tommy smiled. Kids have a way of knowing when you're doing something important. Or she's angling for a later bedtime, Jonah said, but his voice was thick. Around 10, they finally called it a night. Celeste offered to drive Jonah home, and he accepted, too tired to face public transportation. They drove through the city in comfortable silence, and Jonah thought about how much had changed in 3 weeks, how 5 strangers had become something like family, how a chance encounter had become a movement. You ever wonder about timing? Celeste asked as they stopped at a red light. Like, what if you hadn't been working that night? What if Tommy and his crew had gone to a different restaurant? What if I'd called security immediately? I try not to think about it. The what-ifs will drive you crazy. But doesn't it feel like fate? Like we were all supposed to meet exactly when and how we did? I don't believe in fate. I believe in choices. Tommy chose to confront you. I chose to intervene. You chose to listen. We all chose what happened next. That's very rational and not at all romantic. Romance is for people who don't have 6-year-olds asking about butterfly wing counts. She laughed, pulled up in front of his building. Jonah, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? I mean, really happy. Because you seem like someone who spent so long in survival mode that you forgot what thriving looks like. The question hit harder than it should have. I'm getting there. For the first time in years, I wake up and don't dread the day. That's not nothing. No, that's everything. She hesitated. I've been in survival mode too. Different kind, but same result. Just going through motions, achieving goals that don't actually fulfill me. This program, working with you and the team, it's the first time I felt like what I'm doing actually matters beyond my bank account. Welcome to purpose. It's terrifying and addictive. Good description. She looked at him in the dim light. Thank you for taking a chance on this, on me, for believing I could be better than I was. You made yourself better. I just pointed you in the right direction. He got out of the car, watched her drive away, and felt that strange sensation again, the universe shifting, settling into new configurations. Inside, Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, some late-night show playing softly on the TV. Jonah covered her with a blanket, checked on Emma, sprawled diagonally across her bed as always, and then stood in his small kitchen with a beer he didn't particularly want, processing the day. His phone buzzed. Tommy. Jessica's asking for you again. Can you come by tomorrow? She wants to tell you something. Jonah typed back. What time? Afternoon? She's clearest then. I'll be there. The next day, Jonah found Jessica sitting up in bed, looking frailer than before but mentally sharp. Tommy stepped out to give them privacy. He doesn't know I called you, Jessica said without preamble, and I need you to not tell him. Okay, what's going on? I'm stopping treatment. The doctors give me 2 weeks, maybe 3. The treatments are buying me days but costing me quality of life.
I want to spend whatever time I have left actually living, not just surviving in a hospital bed. Jonah's chest tightened. Does Tommy know? I'm telling him tonight. But I needed to tell you first because I need you to promise me something. She fixed him with eyes that had seen too much and understood everything. When I'm gone, he's going to fall apart. Let him. Don't try to fix it or rush him through grief, but also don't let him disappear into it. Give him space, but not too much space. Make him show up for work even when he doesn't want to. Make him remember he has purpose beyond me. Jessica, I'm not sure I'm qualified.
You're exactly qualified. You survived losing yourself. You know the path back. Be his guide. What if I can't? What if he's too far gone? He won't be. Because he's got you and Steve and Darren and Mike. He's got people who need him. That's what saved you, isn't it? Having Emma need you? She was right. He'd survived because he couldn't leave his daughter alone. Because her need for him had been greater than his desire to escape. I'll do my best, Jonah promised. That's all anyone can do. She settled back against her pillows, suddenly looking exhausted. Tell me about Emma. What's she like? They talked for an hour about 6-year-old philosophy and butterfly wing debates and the particular joy of watching someone discover the world. Jessica listened with the intensity of someone archiving memories for a future she wouldn't see. When Tommy came back, Jonah left them alone, but not before Jessica caught his hand one last time. Thank you, she whispered, for giving him something to live for after I'm gone. Walking out of the hospital, Jonah called Celeste. Everything okay? She answered. Jessica's stopping treatment. 2, maybe 3 weeks. Silence. Then, what does Tommy need? Time, space, and a reason to keep going. We'll make sure he has all 3. Can you schedule a team meeting for tomorrow? I want to make sure we've got contingency plans in place. Make sure Tommy knows the work continues whether he's there or not, but also that his position is secure regardless of how much time he needs. You're good at this. At what? Leading with humanity. I'm learning. You're a good teacher. That night, Jonah lay awake thinking about impermanence, about the fragility of every good thing, about how quickly life could shift from bearable to unbearable. He thought about Jessica choosing quality over quantity, about Tommy, about to lose the person who made him whole, about all the families they'd met who'd already lost everything. Emma crawled into bed with him around 3 a.m., wordless and half asleep, and he held her, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the solid weight of her against his chest. Daddy, she murmured. Are you sad? A little bit, baby girl. Someone I know is very sick. Will they get better? No, but they're very brave about it. Emma thought about that with whatever logic 6-year-olds apply to mortality. When people die, they turn into stars, right? That's what you said when Grandpa died. He'd told her that because he couldn't bear to tell her the truth. That death was just absence, just nothing, just gone. That's right. They become stars. Then they're not really gone. We can still see them. Yeah, sweetheart, we can still see them. She fell back asleep in his arms, and Jonah lay awake until dawn, thinking about stars and survival and the incredible courage it took to keep living when everything hurt. The team meeting the next day was subdued. Tommy wasn't there. He'd sent a message that he was staying with Jessica, that she'd told him about stopping treatment, that he needed time. We proceed as planned, Celeste said. Steve, how's the Oakdale situation? Management agreed to our modernization proposal. We're allocating $500,000 for equipment upgrades. If this works, we save 200 jobs. And if it doesn't, we've got transition plans ready for every worker. Nobody gets blindsided. They worked through the agenda efficiently, professionally, but the empty chair where Tommy usually sat felt like an accusation. After everyone left, Jonah remained behind with Celeste. This is going to get harder before it gets easier, he said. I know, but we keep going. That's what Jessica wants. That's what they all deserve. You know what I think? I think you're secretly a softie who built all these walls to protect yourself from caring too much. And now the walls are down and you don't know how to handle actually feeling things. Celeste looked at him for a long moment. That might be the most accurate thing anyone's ever said about me. She paused. Is it that obvious? Only to people who've done the same thing, Takes one to know one. She smiled, sad and genuine. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The cop who couldn't save himself and the CEO who couldn't see past her spreadsheets. Hey, we're doing better now. That counts for something. Does it? Or are we just marginally less broken? Both. Both things are true. They sat in silence for a while, two people learning to be human again, surrounded by evidence of their efforts. Intake forms and case files and strategic plans, all of it adding up to something that mattered. I should go, Jonah said finally. Pick up Emma, make dinner, pretend to be a functional parent. You are a functional parent. Emma's lucky to have you. Most days I'm just faking it and hoping she doesn't notice. That's called parenting. You're doing it right. Walking home through streets that had become familiar, Jonah thought about luck and loss and the impossible mathematics of life. How you could gain everything and lose everything in the same breath. How joy and grief were often indistinguishable. How the only way through was forward. His phone buzzed. Tommy. She's sleeping, comfortable, at peace. Thank you for yesterday, for listening to her, for promising what you promised. It means everything. Jonah typed back, anytime, I'm here, whatever you need. The response came quickly. Just be ready. When it happens, be ready to remind me why I need to keep going, because right now, I can't see it. I will, I promise. And Jonah stood there on the sidewalk, phone in hand, making promises he wasn't sure he could keep to people who needed them desperately, and feeling the weight of it settle on his shoulders like a familiar coat. This was what mattered. This connection, this commitment, this willingness to show up for people, even when, especially when, it was hard. He picked up Emma from school, listened to her excited chatter about young scholars and a new friend and something complicated involving recess politics, and felt the counterweight to all that heaviness. This uncomplicated love, this reason to keep trying. Daddy, can we get ice cream? It's Wednesday. Ice cream is a weekend food. But I got into young scholars. That's celebration ice cream. Celebration ice cream doesn't have rules. He laughed despite everything. Okay, celebration ice cream it is. They sat in a booth at Scoopy's, Emma with her face covered in chocolate, Jonah with his phone silenced because some moments were too sacred to interrupt, and he thought about Jessica's question about happiness. Was he happy? Right now, watching his daughter demolish an ice cream sundae while explaining her theory about why butterflies have exactly 4 wings and not 6 like Marcus insisted, yeah, he was happy. Not perfectly, not completely, but genuinely. And that was enough, more than enough. That was everything. Jessica Briggs died on a Thursday morning while Tommy was holding her hand and telling her about the meeting they'd had with Precision Parts Manufacturing, about how they'd saved 200 jobs, about how her belief in him had made all of it possible. She squeezed his hand once, smiled that radiant smile that had always been too big for her frail body, and then she was gone. The call came to Jonah at 6:43 a.m. while he was making Emma's lunch. He answered on the second ring, heard Tommy's ragged breathing, and knew without being told. I'm on my way, Jonah said. No, don't. I need... Tommy's voice cracked. I need to be alone with her for a while. But tonight... Can you come tonight? I'll be there. Whatever you need. He hung up and stood in his kitchen, peanut butter knife in hand, feeling the weight of a promise made to a dying woman settle fully on his shoulders. Emma appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school, her hair a mess of tangles she'd attempted to brush herself. Who was that? A friend. Someone very important to him just died. Emma processed this with the matter-of-fact acceptance of children who hadn't yet learned that death was supposed to be unbearable. Is he sad? Very sad. You should bring him soup. When I'm sad, you make me soup. That's actually a really good idea, baby girl. After dropping Emma at school, Jonah called Celeste. She answered immediately, her voice already professional and ready despite the early hour. Jessica passed this morning. Silence. Then, quietly, how's Tommy? Broken. Holding on. I'm going over tonight. What do you need from me? Give him time. As much as he needs. And make sure the team knows they'll want to be there for him. Consider it done. Jonah, are you okay? The question surprised him. I didn't know her that well.
That's not what I asked. He thought about the particular grief that came from witnessing someone else's loss, from feeling the fragility of every good thing. I'm okay, but ask me again later. I will. That's a promise. He spent the day working from home, fielding calls and emails, coordinating with Steve and Darren and Mike about covering Tommy's responsibilities, making sure the machinery they'd built could function without its heart for a while. At 4 o'clock, he picked up Emma, made the soup she'd suggested, chicken noodle, nothing fancy, just warm and nourishing and made with care, and drove to Tommy's apartment. The place was small and cluttered with the accumulated debris of a long marriage, photographs on every surface, Jessica's sweaters still draped over chairs, her books stacked beside the couch with bookmarks holding places she'd never returned to. Tommy sat in the center of it all, still wearing the clothes he'd worn to the hospital, holding a coffee mug that had long since gone cold. I don't know how to do this, Tommy said when Jonah sat down beside him. Everyone keeps saying it gets easier, but how? How does this get easier? It doesn't get easier. You just get stronger, strong enough to carry it. I don't want to be strong. I want her back. I know, but that's not one of the options, so we work with the options we have. They sat in silence for a long time. Jonah heated up the soup, made Tommy eat half a bowl even though he claimed he wasn't hungry, made him drink water, made him talk about Jessica, not the dying, but the living. The early years, the inside jokes, the small moments that made up a marriage. She made me promise, Tommy said eventually. Promise I wouldn't give up. Wouldn't let this break me. She said I had too much work left to do, too many people counting on me. He looked at Jonah with red-rimmed eyes. How am I supposed to care about work when she's gone? You care because she asked you to, because the work matters, because other people are going through what you're going through, and you're the only one who understands it viscerally enough to actually help them. Jonah paused. And because when the grief is too big to handle, sometimes the only thing that saves you is having something outside yourself to focus on. Is that what saved you? Work? Work and Emma. Having someone need me kept me alive long enough to remember why I wanted to stay alive. Tommy nodded slowly. She was so proud of what we're building, kept telling everyone at the hospital about it. Nurses, doctors, other patients. She made it sound like we were changing the world. Maybe we are. In small ways. One person at a time. That's what she said. That small changes accumulate into transformation. That we just had to trust the process. Over the next 2 weeks, Jonah watched Tommy navigate grief with the same stubborn determination he'd brought to everything else. He showed up for work most days, sometimes leaving early, sometimes just sitting in meetings without contributing, but showing up. He spoke at Jessica's funeral with a strength that came from somewhere deep and unbreakable, telling stories that made people laugh and cry in equal measure. He threw himself into the memorial project with Mike, channeling his pain into ensuring that no one who'd been lost would be forgotten. And slowly, incrementally, he started to heal. Not recover. Recovery implied returning to what was and what was no longer existed. But heal. Build scar tissue. Learn to function with a piece of himself permanently missing. The memorial groundbreaking happened on a Saturday in late November, the kind of day where the sky threatened snow but hadn't yet committed. Over 300 people showed up, families of the lost, former Dawson workers, community members, and a surprising number of current HandCorp employees who'd heard about the project and wanted to bear witness. The site was the old Dawson Steel parking lot, already cleared and prepped. The memorial itself would be a curved wall of polished granite with names etched in chronological order, surrounded by a garden that would bloom in spring. At the center, a sculpture Mike had designed, abstract but unmistakably human, figures reaching toward each other, supporting each other, holding each other up. Celeste stood at the podium they'd erected, looking small and human against the backdrop of what her decisions had destroyed. Jonah stood nearby with Tommy, Steve, Darren, and Mike, ready to intervene if the crowd turned hostile. I won't stand here and tell you I understand your pain, Celeste began, her voice steady but not cold. I can't. What I can tell you is that I'm responsible for decisions that caused unimaginable harm to this community, that my pursuit of profit blinded me to the human cost of my actions, that I failed you, and I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover that failure. Someone in the crowd shouted something Jonah couldn't make out. Celeste didn't flinch. This memorial exists because 19 people died as a result of my decisions. 19 people who deserved better, who deserved warning, support, options, who deserved to be seen as human beings rather than line items on a balance sheet. This memorial exists to ensure we never forget them, to ensure their lives meant something, to ensure their deaths change how we think about the human cost of economic decisions. She stepped away from the podium, walked to where the first granite panel would stand, and placed a single rose on the ground. Maria Ramirez came forward next, placing a photograph of Jorge. Then others followed one by one, bringing photographs, flowers, mementos, testimonials. The ground where the memorial would stand became a shrine to loss and memory and the insistence that these lives mattered. Tommy was last. He carried a small box, opened it to reveal Jessica's wedding ring. He held it up so everyone could see. "My wife Jessica didn't work at Dawson," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "But she died because of its closure, because we lost our insurance, because we couldn't afford her treatment, because I was so consumed with desperation and rage that I couldn't see a way forward." He looked at Celeste. "This woman gave me that way forward. Not because she's a saint, she's not, but because she was willing to face what her choices cost and do something about it. Jessica's name won't be on this memorial. She wouldn't want it to be. But her belief in second chances, in redemption, in the possibility of building something good from something terrible, that's the foundation this memorial stands on." He placed the ring in the box, buried it in the ground where the memorial would be built. For Jessica. And everyone who loved someone they couldn't save. The groundbreaking ceremony itself was simple. 5 shovels, 5 people turning earth. Celeste, Tommy, Steve, Darren, and Mike working together to create the first wound in the ground that would become something beautiful. Afterward, people mingled, shared stories, connected in the way people do when grief makes them brave enough to be vulnerable. Jonah moved through the crowd, listening, learning, understanding more with each conversation how deep the damage had gone and how much work remained. Maria Ramirez approached Celeste, and Jonah tensed, ready to intervene. But Maria just stood there for a moment, looking at this woman who'd funded her husband's destruction. And then she did something unexpected. She hugged her. "Thank you," Maria said quietly, "for remembering him, for making sure he mattered." Celeste held her, and Jonah saw tears tracking down the CEO's face, all her careful composure finally completely shattered. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know, and I believe you. That's enough for today." They stayed until the last person left, until the sun was setting and the temperature had dropped enough that their breath came out in visible clouds. The 5 of them, Jonah, Tommy, Steve, Darren, and Mike, stood with Celeste at the memorial site, looking at the turned earth and imagining what it would become. "Jessica would have loved this," Tommy said quietly. "She always believed in making meaning from pain." "She sounds like she was remarkable," Celeste said. "She was. And she believed in you, in what we're building. She said it was proof that people could change, that mistakes didn't have to be permanent, that redemption was possible. I hope she was right. She usually was." The following Monday, Jonah presented the division's 3-month report to Celeste's board of directors. He'd prepared for hostility, skepticism, demands for hard numbers, and concrete ROI. What he got was more complicated. The boardroom was all dark wood and leather chairs, intimidating by design. 12 people sat around the massive table, each of them worth more money than Jonah would see in several lifetimes. Celeste sat at the head of the table, her face professionally neutral. Jonah began with the numbers they'd understand. "In 3 months, we've enrolled 147 displaced workers in our program. 89 have completed initial skills assessments. 63 are currently in retraining programs. 41 have secured new employment with an average salary within 15% of their previous positions. We've prevented 1 facility closure, saving 200 jobs. We've established partnerships with 12 vocational schools and 6 community colleges. Our operating costs are running slightly under budget." "What's the return on investment?" one board member asked. A man in his 60s, gray suit, expression suggesting he'd never believed in this project. "Depends on how you define return," Jonah said. Financial ROI is difficult to quantify in the short term, but we've prevented an estimated $3 million in public assistance costs, generated positive PR worth approximately $5 million based on media coverage and social media engagement, and created goodwill in communities where HandCorp operates that's invaluable when we need permits, partnerships, or political support. That's a lot of hand-waving around actual numbers, another board member said. A woman this time, younger, sharper. You're right, Jonah agreed. So let me give you different numbers. Before this program, 91% of workers displaced by HandCorp decisions ended up earning significantly less within a year. Many ended up on public assistance. Some ended up homeless, some died, from suicide, from lack of health care, from the particular kind of despair that comes from losing your purpose. Those outcomes created enemies. People who hated HandCorp, who hated Ms. Han, who had every reason to cause problems for us. He pulled up a slide showing social media sentiment analysis. 3 months ago, mentions of HandCorp on social media were 67% negative. Today, 43% positive, 32% neutral, 25% negative. That's a massive shift in public perception. That's communities starting to see us as partners rather than predators. That's worth something, even if it doesn't show up in quarterly earnings. You're asking us to value sentiment over profit, the gray suit said. I'm asking you to value long-term stability over short-term gains. I'm asking you to recognize that destroying communities creates enemies, and enemies eventually cost you more than programs like this. I'm asking you to be smart enough to understand that sustainable capitalism requires occasionally prioritizing people over profit margins. The room went very quiet. Celeste looked at Jonah with an expression that might have been pride or might have been terror. He couldn't quite tell. Mr. Carter, said an older woman at the far end of the table, someone Jonah recognized as one of the original investors in HandCorp. Are you suggesting that those of us who question this program are not smart? I'm suggesting that intelligence without empathy is incomplete, that you can make all the right business decisions and still build something ultimately unsustainable because you've alienated everyone around you. HandCorp became successful by being ruthless. It will become lasting by being thoughtful. And if we disagree? The gray suit challenged. If we decide this division is a waste of resources and vote to shut it down, Celeste spoke for the first time. Then you'll do so without me. I'll resign, take my majority stake, and start a new company built on these principles. This division isn't a pet project. It's the foundation of how I intend to do business going forward. You can be part of that evolution, or you can find another CEO. The silence that followed was absolute. Jonah had seen hostage negotiations with less tension. Finally, the older woman spoke. Ms. Han, you're asking us to fundamentally change how this company operates based on 3 months of data and a lot of optimism. I'm asking you to change based on 3 months of proof that another way is possible, that we can be profitable and ethical, that we can invest in communities instead of extracting from them, that we can measure success in more than quarterly returns. Celeste's voice was steady, certain. And yes, I'm asking you to take that on faith because the full results won't be visible for years. But I'm also telling you that this is non-negotiable. This is who HandCorp is now. The vote was 8-4 in favor of continuing the program, with a 6-month review scheduled. Not unanimous, but enough. Jonah exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. After the board members left, Celeste sagged into her chair. I can't believe you told them they weren't smart. I told them intelligence without empathy is incomplete. That's different. That's splitting hairs so fine they're invisible. She laughed, slightly hysterical. God, I thought they were going to fire both of us. They couldn't fire you. You're the majority stakeholder. They could make it so miserable I'd want to leave. But you have no such protection, and you basically told them they were morally bankrupt. I told them the truth. That's what you hired me to do. She looked at him with an expression that made something in Jonah's chest tighten. You're either the bravest person I know or the most reckless. Can't I be both? Apparently. She stood, smoothed her skirt, rebuilt her composure piece by piece. Dinner? My treat. We should celebrate not getting fired. Can't. Promised Emma I'd help her practice for the young scholars presentation.
She's doing hers on butterfly metamorphosis. Of course she is. Celeste smiled. Rain check? Definitely. Walking out of Hancorp Tower, Jonah felt the adrenaline drain from his system, leaving him simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. He'd just threatened a boardroom full of billionaires with uncomfortable truths and lived to tell about it. Jessica would have been proud. Tommy was definitely going to laugh at him. His phone buzzed. Phone.
Text from Tommy. Heard you made the board cry. Legend. Jonah typed back, slightly exaggerated. Only one board member looked tearful, and it might have been allergies. Still counting it as a win. Drinks later? Can't. Emma duty. But tomorrow? It's a date. Emma's Young Scholars presentation was scheduled for Friday evening, a showcase where selected students demonstrated their projects to parents and teachers. Jonah spent the week helping Emma build a display board with photographs of different butterfly species, charts showing the stages of metamorphosis, and her own hand-drawn illustrations of the process. Why do they have to change so much? Emma asked one evening while they were working. Why can't they just be butterflies from the beginning? Because sometimes you have to transform completely to become what you're meant to be. Sometimes you have to spend time as something else first, learning and growing before you can fly. Did you transform, Daddy? The question caught him off guard. Yeah, baby girl, I think I did. I was one thing, then I went through a hard time, and now I'm becoming something different. Are you going to fly now? I'm trying to, with your help. She considered this seriously. I think you're already flying. You just don't notice because you're busy helping other people fly too. Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds, Jonah thought, wisdom he'd never expected but desperately needed. The presentation night arrived cold and clear. The school gymnasium was decorated with student projects, proud parents mingling with impressed teachers. Emma stood beside her butterfly display in the dress Celeste had secretly sent over. Nothing too fancy, just pretty and age-appropriate, with butterflies embroidered on the hem, and explained metamorphosis to anyone who'd listen. Jonah watched from a distance, heart full to bursting. Tommy appeared beside him dressed in the first suit Jonah had seen him wear, looking uncomfortable but present. Jessica would have loved this, Tommy said quietly. She always said kids are proof that transformation is possible. She was right about a lot of things. Yeah, she was. They stood together, two men learning to live with loss, watching a 6-year-old explain how caterpillars become butterflies, and finding hope in the metaphor. Celeste arrived late, slipping in the back with an apologetic wave. She'd come straight from another meeting, still in full CEO armor, looking completely out of place among the casual parent crowd. Emma spotted her, waved enthusiastically, and Celeste waved back with genuine warmth. After the presentation, Emma received a certificate of achievement and promptly demanded ice cream to celebrate. Jonah agreed, and to his surprise, Tommy and Celeste joined them. The four of them crammed into a booth at Scoopy's, billionaire CEO, former factory worker, ex-cop single dad, and one precocious first grader, eating ice cream and discussing butterfly wing counts and the merits of celebration versus weekend food categories. I think, Emma announced with chocolate on her face, that celebration ice cream should be allowed anytime someone transforms into something better, like butterflies. Or like Daddy did. Or like you did, Ms. Celeste. Did I transform? Celeste asked, amused. You were a caterpillar who only cared about eating leaves, which is like money. But now you're a butterfly who helps people. That's transformation. Tommy nearly choked on his sundae. Jonah tried to look apologetic while also trying not to laugh. Emma, that's not exactly... Jonah began. No, she's right, Celeste interrupted. That's exactly what happened. I was so focused on consuming money, success, power, that I forgot to become something beautiful, something useful. Thank you, Emma. That's the best assessment of my character arc I've ever heard. What's a character arc? It's how people change in stories, how they start as one thing and become another. Then everyone has a character arc, because everyone changes. Not everyone, Tommy said quietly. Some people get stuck, stay caterpillars forever. Then they don't get to fly, Emma said simply, and flying is the best part. Later, after Emma was asleep and Jonah sat on his fire escape with the cold night air clearing his head, he thought about character arcs and transformation and the strange journey that had brought him from that restaurant patio to this moment. Thought about Jessica's belief in redemption, about Tommy's resilience, about Steve and Darren and Mike rebuilding their lives, about Celeste learning to value impact over income, about Emma explaining it all with the clarity of someone who hadn't yet learned to complicate simple truths. His phone rang. Celeste. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Too much to think about." "Same. I keep replaying the board meeting, keep wondering if I made the right call, threatening to resign." "You did, because it wasn't a bluff. You meant it." "I did. That's what scares me. 6 months ago, Handcorp was everything. Now it's just a means to an end. When did that happen?" "When you remembered that tools are only as valuable as what you build with them." Poetic. "Emma's been teaching me about butterfly metaphors. It's rubbing off." She laughed. "Jonah, can I tell you something?" "Always." "I'm happy. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I'm actually happy. Not satisfied, not successful, not accomplished. Happy. And it's terrifying because I don't know how to protect it." "You don't protect it. You nurture it. You make choices that feed it. You surround yourself with people who support it. You accept that happiness is fragile and choose it anyway." "Is that what you do?" "I'm trying to. Some days better than others." "We're quite a pair. The CEO learning to be human and the cop learning to be brave again. Don't forget the factory worker learning to lead, the data guy learning to trust his instincts, the strategist learning to dream, and the artist learning to remember. And a 6-year-old teaching us all about transformation. Especially that." They talked until late, about everything and nothing, about the memorial and the program and the future they were building together, about Emma's butterfly wisdom and Tommy's resilience and the particular grace of watching people become better versions of themselves. 3 months later, on a March morning that smelled of rain and new beginnings, the memorial was completed. The dedication ceremony was smaller than the groundbreaking, more intimate. Just the families, the team, and a few community members. The granite wall gleamed in the soft light, 19 names etched in permanent reminder. The garden around it was planted but not yet blooming. That would come with time, with patience, with the trust that buried things eventually grow. Tommy stood at his wife's stone, not on the memorial itself, but placed nearby at his request. Jessica Marie Briggs believed in second chances, made them possible. "She'd be proud of you," Jonah said, standing beside him. "Of all of this." "I hope so. I'm trying to live up to her faith in me." "You're doing more than that. You're honoring her memory by helping others avoid your pain." The program had grown beyond what any of them had imagined. 347 workers enrolled, 2 facilities saved, partnerships with 17 educational institutions. A model other companies were starting to replicate. Small changes accumulating into transformation, just like Jessica had said. Celeste gave a brief speech, not about money or success or corporate responsibility, but about memory and meaning and the obligation to do better. Maria Ramirez spoke about Jorge, about his pride in his work, about how the memorial ensured he wasn't forgotten. Others shared stories, tears, laughter, memories. And when it was done, when everyone had placed their flowers and said their goodbyes and drifted back to their lives, Jonah found himself alone at the memorial with Emma. She studied the names carefully, sounding out the difficult ones. "Why do people need memorials, Daddy?" "Because forgetting is easy. Remembering takes effort. Memorials remind us to make that effort." "So we don't make the same mistakes?" "Exactly." She thought about that, then placed her hand on the wall where Mike's father's name was etched. "I won't forget. I'll remember that people's jobs matter, that their lives matter, that butterfly transformations only work if you take care of the caterpillars." "That's exactly right, baby girl." Walking back to the car, Emma's hand in his, Jonah thought about the distance between that Friday night in November and this March morning. Thought about how 5 desperate men and 1 ruthless CEO had collided and somehow created something beautiful from their combined brokenness. Thought about Jessica's wisdom and Tommy's strength and Celeste's transformation and his own slow, difficult journey back to wholeness. Thought about how the universe's timing was cruel and kind in equal measure, how every ending created space for new beginnings, how loss and hope were often indistinguishable. His phone buzzed. Text from Celeste. "Dinner tonight? My place? I'm cooking. Well, attempting to cook." No promises on edibility. He typed back, "Can Emma come? She'll want to supervise. Please bring her. I need all the help I can get." That evening, in Celeste's penthouse, that had slowly accumulated personal touches, photographs, Emma's artwork on the fridge, a purple bicycle parked by the door for when Emma visited, they attempted to make lasagna together. It was chaos. Flour everywhere, sauce on the ceiling, Emma directing operations with the confidence of someone who'd watched every cooking show ever made. Tommy arrived with garlic bread. Steve and Darren brought wine. Mike showed up with dessert. They crammed around Celeste's dining table, this unlikely family built from crisis and choice, eating mediocre lasagna and excellent company. "To transformation," Celeste said, raising her glass. "To second chances," Tommy added. "To Jessica," Mike said quietly, "who believed in all of this before any of us did." They toasted, and Jonah looked around the table at these people who'd become essential to him, to Emma, to the version of himself he was becoming. Looked at his daughter, chocolate on her face again, happy and secure, and surrounded by adults who'd chosen to build something good together. This was what mattered, not the success or the salvation or the redemption arc. Just this: connection, community, the choice to show up for each other, day after day, especially when it was hard. "Daddy," Emma whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Are we flying now?" Jonah looked at her, at this perfect small person who'd saved him without knowing she needed saving, and smiled. "Yeah, baby girl," he said, "we're flying." And for the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, he meant it completely. Not metaphorically, not aspirationally, but actually. They were flying. All of them. Imperfectly, uncertainly, but genuinely. Caterpillars who'd found their wings, people who'd transformed, stories that had found their endings and discovered those endings were really just new beginnings in disguise. Outside the penthouse windows, the city sprawled in familiar patterns. Millions of lives intersecting and diverging, each one carrying its own potential for transformation. Somewhere in it, another person was facing their worst moment. Another community was fracturing. Another decision was being made that would ripple through lives in ways its maker couldn't imagine. But also somewhere in it, someone was choosing differently. Someone was seeing people instead of numbers. Someone was believing that second chances were possible, that mistakes didn't have to be permanent, that small changes could accumulate into something revolutionary. And that was enough. More than enough. That was everything. The laughter around the table rose and fell like music, and Jonah let himself sink into this moment, this imperfect, beautiful, hard-won peace. Let himself believe in the possibility of happy endings that were really just happy continuations. Let himself fly.